All right. Here. All right. So, in thinking about some of these questions that we have, would like to hear how ready and willing and prepared you feel about taking leadership on the national strategy. Obviously, that has been encouraged through our learning collaborative, but where are you feeling? How ready and prepared do you feel?
Well, I'll jump in. It's Lisa Schneider from Respite Care Association of Wisconsin. And we took a look at the strategies and the 5 goal areas and matched up all of the programs that we have to see where they fell in those goals and or if they fell under those goals. And probably 90% of things fell within the 5 goals, including the data stuff, so some of the things that weren't just number 3, we kind of had a little bit of something almost in each, more heavily on number 3. But we've got that as a document. And then with the statewide coalition that we have, the Wisconsin Family Caregiver Supports Association, we're applying for that national strategy grant. So we kind of did the same thing with multiple organizations that are part of this coalition and kind of did an outline with those activities, again, with the national strategy. So we've got something here, but it's all still working towards the same common goals.
Okay. All right. And so some of the partners maybe are picking off pieces that they will concentrate on. That was kind of my sense then. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So that's one way to do it, right? Create those leaders in other taking on roles that will help you all move together forward. So great. Any other thoughts?
Well, we embedded everything in our grant application so that, we were addressing all of those strategies in our grant application. But one thing that we've really been focusing on in the first year is revamping our coalition so that it's more robust and has more providers and also more caregivers participating so that we can really have the caregiver voice. And then we're also working with some target populations that we want to make sure that we're serving because they tend to be more hesitant to participate in respite. So we're really honing in on that. But I feel like we're
You're ready on the roll. Okay.
Yeah, we're on the roll.
Okay, wonderful.
I'd say we're pretty similar in Oklahoma. We didn't separate or isolate like a mission to accomplish the 5 goals, but they're more of a guiding, roadmap to how we want to improve, and it helps support us. We're like, hey, the national strategy is this, so this supports why we want to do this, and Oklahoma's moving toward that. We realize that we're ahead of the national average on our seniors population being more than our 18 and under. Then we probably hit ours at like 2030. So they kind of lit a match under everybody, and our state's kind of moving forward. They actually passed a tax credit for this year, where I think it's $2,000 tax credit, but then it's $3,000 if the care receiver is a veteran or has dementia. So our state's kind of on board. We're moving forward.
So there are some things that are moving, and that may not be directly tied to the grantee or the state, but the state is taking some leadership on it. Well, that's amazing because there are state goals and objectives that were part of that national strategy that we want to see some movement on. Absolutely. So that's great. So do you feel like you're ready and prepared to kind of continue that leadership role, pushing those objectives forward?
Yes, we are. We got some long-term champions that have been pushing it. And like I said, this just gives everybody more of a guide, a blueprint, and it's great backing to say this is the national strategy. It's not just me, or it's not just
Yeah.
us.
Okay.
This is what our funder wants us to do.
So that does help just to even have a national strategy to help
Yes.
push those activities in your state. Okay, very good. Any other thoughts? Would there be any tools or resources, something that you wish you could have a better grasp of, maybe that would help in your leadership or developing other leaders? What are your thoughts about, what what tools or resources could help if you had them in hand
Mhm.
or had access to them?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. I'm the Family Caregiver Alliance program officer in Rhode Island, and we work very closely with the Office of Healthy Aging, our uh, our state agency on aging. And I'm curious what your thoughts are around the financial and workplace security goal, addressing those sort of macro financial planning pieces, workplace policies and practices. I'm curious to hear what other resources and where folks are at on that.
Okay, so that would be a resource that you would benefit in having pulled together to kind of see what everyone's thinking along those lines, the workplace security of caregivers. And I know we do have some activities along those ways that maybe just need to be teased out and shared a little bit more broadly. Okay. Any other thoughts about tools and resources that would help you in your work, that would sustain your leadership in some way? How would you be able to keep
Well, I'm going to
moving
go
forward?
back. I'm going to go back to the question that I posed earlier, because I see there's state entities here who are the actual applicants of the lifespan respite for people like me and or Adrian, and I'm not sure if some of you others are with state agencies, but to just have people from the state to sit down with their coalition and compare. Just so, well, we have a supportive state, Lynn is so active, but just other people to get together with their respite coalition to mesh their goals together. I think that is something that needs to happen for those who are structured that way with the lifespan respite grant.
That there would be much more of an obvious uh, method of communicating and working together on those goals with the partners that are part of it. I mean, the lifespan grants need the coalitions, right, to apply in, so that there is some real active engagement there across those lines. Okay, all right.
And also just recognizing and understanding what the coalitions are doing. So some of it is going to be an aha moment if we ever had that conversation, and not knowing that maybe they're thinking about doing something with number 3, the number 3 goal on there. We're loaded, so let's talk.
Yeah, okay. And just making sure that yeah, that you can take on those added activities, or that you have the staffing support to do so. Okay. Any other thoughts?
I think along Lisa's comment, the lines of that, I totally agree. We have weekly meetings with, sorry, now they've turned into monthly meetings with the lead on our state respite grant. But they're usually just check-in conversations, and we've really wanted to be a part of a much bigger process. So we can't force that conversation, but we just keep trying to hint at, there's much more we can do. And, the other ways we could be helpful, and in bigger ways we can be helpful.
Okay.
One place where we're getting a lot of good information, but it's not even under the lifespan respite grant. It's an ACL technical assistance grant to the states, which isn't any money. It's just 250 hours of service, but it forces us to come together weekly to share information on data collection around the direct care workforce and how it helps and hurts family caregivers. That's going really well. But the lead, the lead of the lifespan grant, respite grant, those aren't the same people that, you know, we're
Oh, they're
assigned to.
not engaged. Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, there's, and it's a small state, like some of you are, but, you know, they're different people on different projects, and, I, you know, I constantly hear that everybody's stretched so thinly, but, I get one comment that came from one of these meetings was, you know, this is not the only project we do, but, you know, to me, it's like one of the most important, or it should be, or it could be, if we were more engaged.
If they're working with family caregivers, you would think that there would at least be a role to have that engagement and encourage that. So it does sound like there have been some resources that ACL's put together that have helped to kind of bring people together and into some conversations, but we're still missing people.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. Is there any additional information or support that would be helpful to you as you continue your work? You know, we had a whole series of things just on some teasing out some leadership skills and development in our series. We've talked about the goals of the national strategy, but everyone's working on, you know, different goals and activities related to the national strategy. But, you know, is there some information or support that would be helpful?
Yeah.
Anyone else have
Yeah.
a thought?
Yeah, one thing comes immediately to mind. I asked, I think it was a deputy cabinet secretary, is there a master plan for aging in the state? Because I knew there was a few years ago, but she didn't know. And so she was going to ask her boss. So that told me a lot right there, and I haven't gotten the answer back yet. So if I just had a master plan, just a direction that everybody's going in, even if they feel like they're just a cog in that big wheel, I think that would be really helpful, and it would help us with overtures we could make the different parts
Seeing
of
how
the
they work in. Okay, so that's that sense of, here's the things we're working on. We know they're tied to the national strategy, and they could be incorporated into this master plan
Yes.
for our state, that that be reflected and saying, yes, we've got, maybe it's just adding a question to a, you know, an intake form, or maybe it's so that we have some data, or maybe it's that we combine and say, okay, this resource is going to serve a little broader definition of caregiver, or something like that, that we can bring into that discussion. Okay. Any other thoughts as you're thinking about your role in implementing the national strategy goals and objectives, or at least some part of that? You know, what has your experience has been working on the national strategy goals? Are you getting some wins, or are you encountering, you know, new challenges? Anyone have any thoughts? It, you know, I know that we talked about barriers, and how I think the most common barrier is people, having enough people to work on it. The other resource is financing the funds to implement sometimes some of those goals. But what has your experience been like in implementing? Are you getting some good buy-in? Are you finding that that you're at competing priorities in your state, that getting a national strategy goal or objective in there is getting pushed to the side because of other stronger, higher priorities?
Well, I do think that with the programs that we have, you know, we blew up about 5 years ago and created everything from scratch. And so we ended up establishing some really strong core direct respite grants, and we're even targeting specific populations, yada yada. But it's grown so much; it's just been exponentially the growth. And so but it's so hard to sustain a program when you don't know if you're going to get funded for 1 year or if you're going to get funded for 3 years, or if you, so to sustain that, it's always a little bit tricky. So when you're going to go forward and establish a goal, you can only forecast as far as your money will let you.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's an absolute truth there. And even states that have state designated funding for respite, you still have, budget pressures and stuff that sometimes we have mandates or other things that are basically unfunded. They're good things to do if we can find the way to blend those resources. Okay.
I sure like Lisa. Oklahoma has a similar problem. They haven't go by with grant funding. We don't have any state funded. However, we have found, I think it's 4 of our legislature members who are caregivers themselves. And they were the ones who championed the tax credit. And now we're working on seeing if they can get some appropriations for caregiving.
Well, that's a valuable resource if you can tap it, right? And have legislators who have a family caregiving story that they can share and be able to point them. And I think that'll be a wonderful resource. I'd be surprised if you don't get some leverage out of that to help you move forward on the goals. It is difficult when our states are reliant somewhat on the fact that there is federal funding for lifespan respite. And so they're not ponying up their own state general funds to support respite. And so that is kind of like, why do we need to devote funds? We'll just go after another grant, but those grants need matched. Those grants need support as well. And if they weren't available, what would the state do? Kind of giving them some reason to be engaged maybe in the conversation. Any other thoughts as you're thinking about, your role, your implementation, how you're feeling in taking on these national strategy objectives? What could we be finding that would be helpful to you in that endeavor?
I mean, to me, the national strategies already fit well in with the parameters of the lifespan respite grant. So I feel like we all tuck in or dovetail nicely into the national strategy, either to, addressing one goal or 5 goals or whatever it is. But it just seems that we're able to dovetail in somewhat.
Okay, so you can find the funding maybe or the match to it in the grant act that will help support those activities.
Well,
Oh.
and I wanted to also chime in with Donnie's, because we do get state appropriations, and we did get a little bit of an increase 2 years ago, and I still need more. But because my state grantee sees us getting X amount of dollars from the lifespan respite grant, because we've got a couple grants right now, they think we've got well enough money that we don't need any more state appropriations. And they don't understand that, the national funds are for very specific purposes. We still have core operations to manage. And this just happened because the governor was going to put it in their budget, and the department head for DHS said, no, they're already getting a lot of federal monies. They don't need to have an increase in their appropriation. And I'm like, oh, I hit the table. So that communication is key.
Communicating that, yeah. All right. Looks like our time is up. We're going to go back to the main group now, but thank you for your thoughts. If you had something that you didn't get a share, put it in the chat. Help us out that way. Thank you.